One stormy night, that dog goes into labor and delivers 10 tiny puppies, 10 new lives, 10 little pieces of hope. But moments later, with her newborns pressed against her, the mother dog takes her final breath. When the sun rises, the scene inside that house will break your heart. A lifeless German shepherd on the sofa, 10 crying puppies searching for her warmth, and one lonely grandmother whispering through her tears, "It's okay, you still have me." Eleanor Hayes had lived in the little blue house at the end of Maple Street for almost 40 years. But lately it felt less like a home and more like a museum of everyone she'd lost. Her husband's old recliner still sat by the front window, faded and dented in all the places his elbows used to rest. Her son's baseball trophies still lined the shelf above the television, dusty and crooked, their gold paint chipped. The hallway walls were crowded with photographs, weddings, birthdays, Christmas mornings, but there were no new pictures, not for a very long time. Only one thing in the house belonged to her present instead of her past. "Come on, Ranger, breakfast?" Eleanor called, her voice warm despite the stiffness in her throat. From the small bedroom down the hall, heavy paws thumped against the floor. A large German shepherd padded into the kitchen, his coat a rich mix of tan and black, his ears tall and alert. His eyes, deep and intelligent, seemed to understand more than most people ever did. Ranger went straight to her, pressing his head gently against her hip, as if to say good morning. Eleanor's wrinkled fingers sank into his fur, scratching the spot behind his ears that always made him sigh. "You are the only gentleman who still keeps me company," she whispered. "You know that, right?" Ranger Yuye's tail swept slowly across the linoleum floor. Outside, the Ohio sky was pale and cold, the kind of overcast that made everything feel heavier. Eleanor moved slowly, her joints protesting every step as she filled Ranger's bowl with kibble, adding a bit of warm chicken broth like she always did. He waited patient, watching her carefully, never eating until she set the bowl down and gave him a little nod. It had been like that ever since she brought him home from the shelter 3 years ago. She could still remember the smell of the place disinfectant, wet fur, fear. Ranger had been sitting at the back of his kennel, ribs showing, eyes hollow. The volunteer had warned her, he's a former working dog. Police K9, he's been through a lot. We're not sure he'll ever really trust anybody again." Eleanor had just stared through the bars, seeing something shaky but stubborn in his gaze that looked a lot like her own reflection. "I've been through a lot too," Sheedy said quietly. "Maybe we'll figure it out together." And they had. Day by day, slow and patient, they had stitched each other's lives back into something that felt almost whole. As Ranger ate now, she noticed again how his body had changed. His belly was rounder, heavier. His pace had slowed. He didn't launch himself up the stairs anymore. Instead, he climbed them carefully, step by step. When he lay down on the old, sagging sofa, it took him a good minute to find a comfortable position. Eleanor pulled out a chair and sat down opposite him, watching, worrying. "You're getting big, sweetheart," she murmured. "Too big." She said it out loud, but in her head, she'd already said the word she'd been avoiding for weeks. Pregnant. She'd never meant for it to happen. A gap in the backyard fence and a neighbor's intact male dog who liked to wander had taken care of that. By the time she realized, it was too late. The local vet, Dr. Sanders, had told her on the phone, At her age, and with her history, it is going to be risky, but we'll do everything we can when the time comes. The time was coming fast. Ranger finished eating and walked back to her, turning sideways so she could rest her hand on his swollen belly. She felt a flutter beneath her palm, a faint rolling push. She froze, eyes widening. "Oh my," she breathed. "They're moving." For a moment, the house didn't feel so empty. Inside her old companion, life was kicking and twisting, a whole little world she couldn't see yet. Tears stung her eyes, strange, stubborn tears that had nothing to do with sadness. "You're going to be a mama," she whispered, her voice shaky and soft. "And I am going to be a grandma to dogs. Your father would laugh himself silly if he could see us now." She talked to Ranger like this all the time now, about her husband's corny jokes, about the neighbor's loud truck, about the way the grocery store clerk always called her Ma, in that too sweet voice that made her feel ancient. Ranger listened, head tilted, eyes never leaving her face. The phone on the wall rang unexpectedly, its shrill tone cutting through the quiet. Eleanor flinched. Hardly anyone called her anymore. It was usually wrong numbers or the pharmacy. She picked it up. "Hello?" A hesitant male voice answered. Mom?" Her heart stopped, then kicked into a painful rhythm. "Daniel?" she whispered. Static filled the line for a second. "Yeah. I hope it is still okay to call you that." For a moment, all she could hear was the tick of the kitchen clock and Ranger's slow breathing. She gripped the phone with both hands, knuckles white, remembering the last time she'd spoken to her son years ago. The shouting, the words that couldn't be unsaid, the slammed door, the months that had turned into years of silence. "I am your mother," she finally said, her voice barely steady. "Of course it is okay." He let out a breath that sounded like it had been stuck in his chest for years. I was driving through town for work. I saw Maple Street on the GPS and I dawned to know I couldn't not call." She swallowed hard. A dozen questions burned on her tongue, but she asked the one that mattered most. "Are you all right?" "Yeah. I am fine. I am a paramedic now. I am sober. Been sober 3 years. His voice cracked. "I am trying, Mom." Her eyes flooded at once. Ranger got to his feet, sensing her distress, bumping his nose against her arm. "I am proud of you," she whispered. "So proud." They talked for a few minutes, awkward and careful, like people walking across thin ice. He didn't stay long on the phone. He had a shift to get to, a partner waiting. Before he hung up, he said, "Maybe I can stop by sometime. Not today, but sometime." "I'll be here," she said. "I am not going anywhere." When she hung up, the house felt different. Less like a graveyard of memories and more like a place that might someday, maybe, hold new ones. She sank down beside Ranger on the sofa, resting her head against his shoulder. "You hear that?" She sniffed. "Your brother might be coming home, and you're about to have babies. Look at us, Ranger, a broken little family trying to grow again." Outside, the day slid slowly toward evening. The sky darkened to a deep, quiet blue. Eleanor nodded off, sitting right there on the sofa, her hand resting protectively over Ranger Iki's side as the old dog breathed deep and slow. In the middle of the night, a low, pained whine pulled her out of sleep. She blinked, disoriented, then turned. Ranger was pacing in front of the sofa, nails clicking softly on the hardwood. He stopped, hunched, and trembled. Another whine tore from his throat, sharper this time. Eleanor's drowsiness vanished. God, she whispered, it's time. The old woman, the old dog, and 10 lives no one had met yet stood on the edge of something that would change everything. The storm rolled in just after midnight, a slow rumble of thunder that shook the thin glass panes in their frames. Rain began to tap against the windows, soft at first, then harder, a steady drumming that filled the silence between Ranger's low, strained whines. Eleanor flicked on the living room lamp, bathing the room in a warm, yellow glow. Her hands were shaking, but she forced herself to move with purpose. "It's okay, sweetheart," she murmured, spreading an old, clean blanket over the sofa where Ranger loved to sleep. "Right here. You can do it right here." Ranger struggled to climb up, his muscles quivering. She guided him gently, one hand on his chest, the other under his hindquarters. Once he was on the sofa, he curled, panting hard, eyes wide and unfocused. His belly rippled with contractions, the skin stretching tight. Eleanor's heart hammered. She grabbed her phone with slick fingers and dialed Dr. Sanders' office. The call forwarded to the emergency line. A sleepy but composed voice answered. "Dr. Sanders." "It's Ranger," Eleanor said, breathless. "It's happening. The baby's. She's in pain, she's shaking." He was suddenly all business. "Okay, Eleanor, listen to me. I can get there right this second. I am at the clinic with another emergency, but I can talk you through it. Have some towels ready. Keep her warm. Don to move her unless you have to. Let her body do the work." She glanced at the stack of towels she'd kept by the closet for weeks, just in case. She'd told herself she was only being cautious. Deep down, she knew she'd been hoping. "I'm here," she said, voice trembling. "I'll stay on the phone. Just don't hang up on me." "I won tea," he promised. Time stretched and warped as the minutes crawled by. Ranger panted, her sides heaving, eyes occasionally flicking to Eleanor's face as if to make sure she was still there. Eleanor whispered encouragements, her voice soft but steady. "You've been through worse, old girl. Remember that first winter? You were half-starved and you made it. You can do this." The first puppy arrived in a sudden rush of motion and wetness, a tiny, slick shape that slid onto the blanket with a weak, squeaky gasp. Eleanor froze for half a second, then moved like instinct had just woken up inside her bones. She wrapped the newborn gently in a towel, rubbing briskly until its cries grew stronger. Ranger, exhausted but alert, stretched her muzzle toward the pup, licking it clean as best she could. "One?" Dr. Sanders said in her ear. "Good. How's Ranger?" "Tired," she answered, tears already on her cheeks. "But she has doing it." Then came another contraction, and another small, trembling body. Then another, and another. The storm outside grew more intense, lightning flashing briefly through the thin curtains. But inside the house, nothing mattered except the rhythm of Ranger's breaths, the soft cries of new life, the sound of Eleanor's whispering. By the time the fourth puppy came, Eleanor's back ached from leaning over the sofa. Her hands were wet and shaking, but she didn't stop. When the seventh arrived, her knees were numb from kneeling on the floor. Ranger was panting in ragged bursts, eyes half closed, occasionally letting out a weak whine between contractions. "Should there be this many?" Eleanor croaked into the phone. "Sometimes," Dr. Sanders said. "Big litters happen. You're doing great. Just keep them warm. Make sure they find a teat to nurse." She guided each one by one, to Ranger's belly. Tiny mouths latched on blindly, their bodies pressing against their mother, squirming and bumping into each other, seeking warmth and comfort they didn't understand yet, but already needed desperately. When the 10th puppy arrived, Eleanor could hardly believe it. 10 small lives, each one no bigger than her hand, lined up along Ranger S' side like a row of breathing miracles. She laughed then, a watery, incredulous sound that broke into a sob. 10, she whispered. You overachiever. Ranger S' eyes found hers. For a long moment, they just looked at each other, woman and dog, old bones and old scars, the room filled with the sound of rain and tiny suckling noises. Something passed between them then, something wordless and deep. Gratitude. Trust. A kind of goodbye she didn't recognize for what it was. I think it is over, Eleanor told Dr. Sanders. She is not pushing anymore, just breathing really hard. Okay, he said. Let her rest, keep her warm. The puppies will help stimulate her body as they nurse. I'll swing by as soon as I am done here, but it might be a couple of hours. A couple of hours is fine, Eleanor said. We'll be okay. After she hung up, the house felt oddly quiet despite the storm and the soft chorus of tiny movements. The clock on the wall read 3:17 a.m. Ranger Yesa breathing was slow but still loud, each inhale a small battle. Eleanor tucked another blanket around her, careful not to disturb the puppies. She sat on a chair pulled right up to the sofa, leaning forward, elbows on her knees, eyes fixed on Ranger S' chest. You did it, she whispered. I am so proud of you. She thought about all the times Ranger had been there for her, the nights she'd woken from nightmares, gasping, and found the dog already at her bedside. The mornings when her arthritis was so bad she'd cried just trying to get out of bed, and Ranger had stood patiently, letting her brace herself on his sturdy body. The days when the phone never rang and the mail brought nothing but bills and junk, and yet she'd never felt truly, completely alone as long as he was in the room. Rest now, she murmured. I can take it from here. I'll help them grow up, I promise. An hour passed, then another. Somewhere close to dawn, her body betrayed her. Her eyelids grew heavy, burning with fatigue. Her head dipped forward. She jerked it up again, scolding herself. But the exhaustion finally won. Just for a minute, she thought. Just for a minute, I'll close my eyes. She slept sitting upright in the chair, her hand resting lightly on Ranger West's paw, the puppies pressed close to their mother Wu's side. She dreamed of her husband Ia's laughter, of her son as a little boy chasing a puppy across a sunlit yard, of a house full of noise and mess and life. When she woke, the room was eerily still. At first, she thought it was the strange hush of early morning. The storm had moved on, leaving behind a pale gray light. The rain had stopped. The clock read 6:42 a.m. The puppies were moving, squirming clumsily over each other, emitting high-pitched squeaks and tiny yawns. But Ranger wasn't panting anymore. She was lying on her side, right where Eleanor had left her, her body curved protectively around her litter. Her eyes were half open, staring at nothing. Her chest was still. For a moment, Eleanor, the mind, refused to understand. Her breath caught in her lungs. The world narrowed to the sight of that still, broad chest, the neck that had once held a police badge collar, the ears that no longer twitched at every sound. Ranger? She whispered. Silence answered. Something inside her tore loose. No, she said, louder now, leaning forward, hands shaking as she touched Ranger's shoulder. No, no, no. But the body beneath her hands was already cooling, already beginning to lose that familiar, living weight. The puppies, blind and helpless, climbed. over their mother's still form, searching for warmth and milk, crying when they didn't find what they expected. Eleanor's tears fell hot and fast, landing on Ranger ear fur, on the tiny heads of the puppies. Her chest ached so fiercely it felt like it might split open. "You can to leave me," she sobbed. "Not you. Please, not you too." The little blue house on Maple Street had held a lot of goodbyes. Parents, friends, neighbors, her husband's ambulance lights fading down the street. Even her son, walking out the front door one angry afternoon and not coming back. But nothing had ever felt quite like this. This quiet, this pain, this impossible mix of overwhelming love and shattering loss. She slid off the chair and knelt beside the sofa, pressing her forehead against Ranger's neck, breathing in the fading scent of her dog, the faint smell of shampoo, of fur, of home. Behind her closed eyes, memories flashed. The day she'd first opened Ranger's kennel door at the shelter, the first time he'd dared to lay his head in her lap, the night he'd barked until the neighbor came to check on her after she'd slipped in the bathroom and couldn't get up. "Thank you," she whispered, voice broken, "for staying with me as long as you did." The puppies cried harder, tiny, desperate sounds that pulled her back from the edge of her grief. She opened her eyes, lifting her head. 10 lives, writhing and squeaking, completely dependent on her now. They nudged at their mother's body, rooted blindly at her belly, bumped into each other and tumbled. One of them, the smallest, somehow ended up sprawled across Ranger EA's still chest, letting out a thin, reedy cry. "I know," Eleanor said quietly. "I know, baby. I miss her too." Something shifted inside her, then not the grief. That stayed, heavy and sharp, but something alongside it, a fierce, stubborn determination. The same feeling that had carried her through widowed winters and lonely summers. The same stubbornness that had kept her getting up every morning, even when no one was there to notice. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. "All right," she said out loud, voice hoarse but steadying. "Listen up, you little troublemakers. Your mama did the hard part. Now it's my turn." The puppies couldn't hear her words, couldn't understand the promise she was making, but she made it anyway. "I will not let you be alone," she said. "I don't care how old I am. I don't care how tired I get. You are not going to grow up in some shelter cage. You're going to know love, hers and mine." As the sun finally broke through the clouds outside, a thin, soft light spilled over the sofa, over the 10 newborns, over the lifeless body of the dog who had once been called dangerous and broken, over an old woman who had been both of those things herself, and somehow was still standing. She didn't know how or where she'd find the money, or what the neighbors would say. She only knew one thing for sure. She and Ranger's puppies had just begun a story. That wasn't finished yet. The next few days blurred into a strange rhythm that felt like stepping back in time, as if Eleanor had gone from old age straight into motherhood again. Every 2 hours, day and night, she fed the puppies with tiny bottles of formula Dr. Sanders had given her. She sat on the edge of the sofa, her back aching, her fingers cramped, carefully tilting each bottle so the milk flowed just right, not too fast, not too slow. She warmed towels in the dryer, constantly rotating them to keep the babies cozy. She wiped their bellies and backs with a soft cloth, mimicking the way their mother would have cleaned them. She had never been so exhausted in her life, and yet the house felt more alive than it had in decades. They came to know her voice. When she hummed old country songs under her breath, their tiny bodies seemed to relax. When she laughed, really laughed unexpectedly, when one of them tried to bark and only managed a tiny hiccup, they wriggled harder, as if trying to find the source of that warmth. On the third day, after barely 3 hours of sleep total, she collapsed into her recliner and drifted into a shallow nap, the puppies packed together in a makeshift nest in a laundry basket beside her chair. She woke to the sound of a car door slamming outside and a knock at the front door. Her heart did a strange leap. She shuffled over and opened it. A young man stood on the porch wearing a paramedic uniform, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. His hair was shorter than she remembered, flecked with a few early strands of gray at the temples. His eyes, her husband as ease, were cautious and hopeful. "Hey, Mom," Daniel said softly. For a moment she couldn't speak. Her throat closed up. Then she stepped aside, hand shaking as she motioned him in. "You picked quite a time to visit," she managed, attempting a smile. He stepped into the house, looking around as if he were walking through a memory. His gaze fell on the empty dog bed in the corner, then on the laundry basket by the recliner. Tiny noises drifted from it, squeaks and snuffles. "Are those?" he asked, brows lifting. "Puppies," she said, 10 of them. He followed her over to the basket and peered in. 10 little bodies, eyes still closed, fur soft and shiny, were piled together in a sleepy heap. "Whoa," he breathed. "That's a lot." She nodded. Their mama was a lot too. He heard the past tense. His shoulders tensed slightly. "I'm sorry," he said. "Is that the dog you told me about? Ranger?" Eleanor swallowed, nodding slowly. She was everything. She died right after they were born. Kept breathing long enough to bring them here. And then her voice broke. "She left them with me." He stood silently for a moment, then reached out and placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "I've seen that a lot," he said quietly. "On calls. People holding on just long enough to finish something. Say goodbye. Get someone to safety. And then they re-gone. Like their body decides, okay, my job is done. I can rest. Now." She blinked back tears, staring at the puppies. "She saved me, you know," she murmured. "I don't think I would have made it through those first years alone without her. And now Ivy got 10 pieces of her running my life." He smiled faintly. "That sounds like something you'd say about me as a toddler." She let out a wet, shaky laugh. "Well, you weren't far off." He spent the rest of the afternoon there, surprising her with how naturally he fit back into the little house. He washed bottles, changed towels, even learned how to feed one of the puppies gently without getting formula all over its face. He told her stories from his work, the time he helped deliver a baby in an elevator, the old man who refused to go to the hospital until he finished his crossword puzzle. When the sun dipped low and the sky turned pink outside the window, he glanced at his watch, reluctant. "Ivy gotta head back, Mom," he said. "I am on nights for the next week. But I was thinking." He hesitated, then plunged ahead. "I could swing by between shifts, help with the feeding, maybe stay over sometimes, if you'd want that." She looked at him, really looked at the tired lines around his eyes, at the nervous way his fingers tapped his thigh, at the boy she'd raised and the man he'd become, both standing there in her living room. "I would want that," she said simply. "Very much." He leaned over and kissed her cheek before he left, a small and tentative gesture that filled the room with something warm and hopeful. After he was gone, a quiet evening settled over the house. The puppies slept in a warm pile. The air smelled faintly of formula and fresh laundry. Eleanor sank into her recliner again, every muscle in her body aching. On impulse, she reached for her phone and did something she hadn't done in years. She opened the camera and took a picture. 10 puppies, lined up like little commas in a sentence that wasn't finished. Behind them, the edge of the sofa where Ranger had taken her last breath. She stared at the photo for a long time. Then she opened her mostly forgotten Facebook account. Her fingers hovered uncertainly over the keyboard, then began to type. "Ranger's final gift to me," she wrote. 10 little lives. I am an old lady, but I am going to do my best to give them a good start. If anyone wants to follow their journey or maybe give one of them a home someday, let me know. She hit post before she could overthink it. She expected maybe 1 or 2 likes from old church acquaintances she barely saw anymore. She didn't expect what happened next. By morning, her phone was buzzing with notifications. The photo had somehow been shared. A lot. Someone from her church had shared it. Then their niece in another state. Then someone who ran a local animal rescue page. By the time the sun was fully up, thousands of people had seen the picture of the old woman's 10 puppies lined up around the sofa. Comments flooded in. Bless you for taking care of them. Following this story, please keep posting updates. I'll adopt one when they are old enough, I promise. I lost my German Shepherd last year. This made me cry. I'd love to help with food or vet bills. One comment, though, stood out. It was from a local news reporter. Hi, Ms. Hayes. I work for Channel 7. Your story is beautiful and heartbreaking. Would you be willing to let us come by and do a small piece on Ranger and the puppies? I think a lot of people would be touched. Eleanor stared at the message, stunned. Her? On TV? Oh, Ranger, she said aloud, looking toward the sofa as if the dog might still be there, rolling her eyes at all this attention. You always did know how to make an entrance. She considered saying no. She hated the idea of cameras in her house, of strangers poking around her grief. But then she looked at the puppies, at the cost of their formula stacked on the counter, at the vet bill sitting unopened on the table. They needed help. And maybe, just maybe, this was Ranger's way of sending it. She typed back with trembling fingers. You can come. But the story is about her, not about me. 2 days later, the news van pulled up outside her house. A reporter with kind eyes and a cameraman with a soft voice came in, careful and respectful. They filmed the puppies, now a little stronger, wriggling in her hands. They showed the empty spot by the window where Ranger's bed had been, the faded collar hanging on a hook by the door. The reporter asked gentle questions. What did Ranger mean to you? She was my family, Eleanor said simply. How did you feel when she passed right after giving birth? Like the world ended, she answered honestly. But then I looked down and saw that it hadn't. Not quite. There were 10 reminders that life keeps going, even when you think it can. They aired the segment that night. Footage of an old woman in a small blue house, shots of tiny paws and blinking eyelids. Eleanor's voice, shaky but steady, saying, I promised her I would take care of them. I don't break promises. The story didn't stay local for long. Within days, it spread, picked up by bigger stations, shared on national websites, even clipped into little short videos on social media platforms she'd never even heard of. People across the country watched the story of Ranger, the retired police dog who'd found a home with a lonely widow and left behind 10 puppies when she died. They watched the old woman who'd taken on more than most people half her age would dare. They cried, they shared, they reacted, and they reached out. Packages started arriving, bags of high-quality puppy food, tiny collars, soft blankets, toys. Envelopes came in the mail with handwritten notes and $20 bills inside. A local pet supply store offered free vaccinations. A trainer volunteered to help socialize the litter when they were older. Every time the doorbell rang, Eleanor felt like she was opening the door onto something she'd never expected to see again. Kindness. One evening, as she sat cross-legged on the living room floor, surrounded by 10 slightly larger, slightly clumsier balls of fur chewing on her shoelaces and her patience, she heard the door open. "Mom," Daniel called, stepping inside without waiting for an answer. "You're famous, you know that?" She laughed. "Dawn, do you start?" He held up his phone, showing her a video. It was the news clip, re-uploaded, the view count running into the hundreds of thousands. "Crazy thing?" he said, dropping onto the floor beside her. "I was at work, and this lady we were transporting said, 'You look just like that paramedic from the dog story.' And I said, 'That is because it is me.'" She looked at him, eyes wide. "You're on TV too?" He nodded. They used the shot of me holding the little white one. "I've been recognized 3 times this week. I am giving autographs to people who have no idea my credit score is trash." She snorted, then winced as one of the puppies latched onto her finger like it was a chew toy. She gently pried its mouth open. Across the floor, the smallest puppy, the one who'd fallen asleep on Ranger Isa's chest that first morning, stumbled uncertainly toward her. His fur was darker than the others, with a stripe of lighter tan above his eyes that looked like little eyebrows always raised in question. She picked him up, cradling him against her chest. "I think this one stays," she said softly, "with me." Daniel studied the puppy, then his mother. "Yeah," he said, "I think he's already decided that." "What should we call him?" she asked, running a thumb over the tiny bump of his nose. Daniel thought for a moment, then smiled crookedly. "Legacy," he said, "because that's what he is. What she left you, what you were giving all of them." She rolled the word around in her head. "Legacy," she repeated. "All right then, Legacy. Don't you dare chew my furniture." He immediately tried to chew her sleeve. Daniel laughed. He's definitely related to Ranger. As the puppies grew, the house changed around them. Baby gates went up in the doorways. Ranger's old bed became a playground. Photo frames on the walls were joined by newer pictures, blurry shots of puppies tumbling, a candid photo of Eleanor asleep in her recliner with 3 dogs piled on her lap, a photo someone had snapped of her and Daniel stepping out of the house together, both laughing at something only they knew. With every new photo, every new bark, every new mess she had to clean up, the house felt a little less like a shrine to what she'd lost, and a little more like a home again. But as the puppies grew, a new question began to nag at her. Quietly, but insistently. What happens when they are ready to leave? By the time the puppies were 8 weeks old, the little blue house on Maple Street sounded like chaos and felt like joy. Tiny nails scrabbled across the floor at all hours. Toys squeaked from under the sofa and behind the curtains. Puppy pads were a daily battlefield. Every time the mailman stepped onto the porch, a chorus of high-pitched barks erupted like an alarm system made of fluff. Eleanor moved more slowly than she used to, but she moved with purpose, refilling water bowls, sweeping up stray kibble, laughing when a puppy skidded too fast on the hardwood and tumbled into her slipper. They had names now, all of them. Legacy, the smallest, who followed her everywhere. Hope, who was brave enough to approach strangers first. Scout, who somehow always found the one thing in the room he wasn't supposed to chew. Grace, who liked to curl up quietly in anyone's lap. And 6 others, each with their own quirks and personalities. The messages hadn't stopped. People from all over the country had written to her. Veterans who missed their K9 partners. Families who had lost a pet and weren't sure they were ready for another until they saw the story on TV. Parents of kids with anxiety or autism, telling her how much their children lit up watching the puppies grow in the little video clips she posted every few days. She hadn't meant for it to become a regular thing, those video updates. She'd just recorded a few short clips on her phone, Legacy trying to climb onto the couch, Hope tugging on Daniel's shoelace, all 10 puppies falling asleep in a pile mid-play, and posted them with simple captions. But people watched, thousands of them, then tens of thousands. One message came from a woman named Carla in Arizona. "My husband is a retired cop," she wrote. "He lost his K9 partner in the line of duty 2 years ago. He hasn't been the same since. If one of Ranger S' puppies could find its way to us, I think it might help him heal." Another came from a young mother in Michigan. "My son is 8 and on the spectrum. He doesn't connect with most people, but he talks to the screen every time we watch your videos. He keeps saying, 'That one's my friend.' He's talking about the pup with the white patch on his chest." Eleanor read every message, tears often blurring the words. She'd been afraid at first that giving away any of the puppies would feel like losing pieces of Ranger. But the more stories she heard, the more she realized something important. Holding on too tightly could be a kind of selfishness. Love wasn't just about keeping it, was about sharing too. One evening, she sat at the kitchen table with a notebook, the puppies sleeping in the next room, and a pot of tea cooling on the counter. Daniel sat across from her, pen in hand, flipping through the pages where she'd written down names and notes about potential adopters. "You've got a waiting list," he said with a low whistle. "If these were cars instead of dogs, you'd have a dealership." She swatted his arm lightly. "This is serious. I know. He sobered. "You want them to have good lives." "I promised her," she said. "Ranger didn't survive long enough to raise them, so I have to make sure she didn't go through all that for nothing." They went through each application together. The retired cop in Arizona who sent a photo of himself standing in front of a memorial plaque with a German Shepherd SN silhouette on it. The Michigan family who included a picture of their son holding a stuffed dog, his eyes bright in a way his mother said she hadn't seen in years. The local school counselor who wanted a therapy dog for kids dealing with grief and trauma. The young woman who worked nights at a women's shelter and wrote, "I want these kids to see that kindness comes in all shapes, even with pointy ears and big paws." Every story tugged at Eleanor's heart in a different way. When they were done, she put her pen down. "I can to keep them all," she said softly. "My body wouldn't forgive me, but I can choose where they go. I can make sure they go to people who need them as much as I needed Ranger." Daniel sat back, studying her. "You've changed, you know," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "Oh? Into what?" "Into the version of you who wasn't just waiting," he said slowly. "When Dad died, When I left, I think you've been holding your breath for a long time. These little monsters made you breathe again. She looked down at her hands, folded on the table, the wrinkles and age spots that had once felt like evidence of everything she'd lost. I thought I was done, she admitted. Done growing. Done loving anything new. It hurt too much. But then this old dog shows up at a shelter, and I think I am rescuing her. Joke is on me, huh? Ranger rescued both of us, he said quietly. They started making calls the next day. The man in Arizona really cried on the phone when she told him she'd chosen him for one of the pups. The mother in Michigan screamed so loudly with joy that Eleanor had to hold the phone away from her ear. The school counselor left a voicemail saying, "I promise you this pup will be loved by dozens of little hearts every single day." One by one, the puppies left. Each departure was its own small heartbreak. She would hold each one close, whispering into warm fur. "Your mama was brave," she'd say. "You be brave too. Love your person. Take care of them. That's your job now." She sent them off with little care packages, blankets that smelled like the house, a photo of Ranger, a note telling their new families a little bit about the dog whose legacy they were carrying home. Pictures and videos came back. A veteran in Arizona sitting on a porch swing, a German Shepherd pup sprawled across his lap, both of them staring at the desert sunset. A boy in Michigan lying on the floor with a puppy's head resting on his chest, both of them watching cartoons. The boy's mother capturing the moment with shaky, grateful hands. A school assembly where kids lined up to take turns reading aloud while a calm young shepherd lay at their feet, eyes half closed, absorbing all their whispered secrets. Every time a new photo arrived, Eleanor printed it and pinned it to a corkboard she'd bought just for that purpose. Soon the board was overflowing, taped over, layered with images of dogs that all looked a little like Ranger and a lot like themselves. In the end, only one puppy stayed. Legacy. He was bigger now, almost as big as Ranger had been at the beginning, though still lanky, paws a little too big for his body. His eyes were bright and curious, his ears comically floppy when he tried to look serious. He followed Eleanor from room to room, always staying close enough that his fur brushed her leg when she walked. One quiet afternoon, months after the stormy night that had changed everything, Eleanor sat on the familiar old sofa, the same one where Ranger had taken her last breath. Legacy lay beside her, head in her lap, sighing contentedly as she scratched his chest. The house felt different now. The empty ache was still there, in some corner of her heart where Ranger's memory lived, but it no longer swallowed everything else. It sat alongside something else now, gratitude, connection, a sense of purpose. On the coffee table, her laptop was open to a video call. Faces filled the screen. The veteran in Arizona, the Michigan family, the school counselor with her therapy dog curled at her feet, the woman from the shelter with her pup in her lap. It was a strange kind of family reunion, stitched together by Wi-Fi and shared stories and one dog who wasn't here anymore but seemed to be everywhere somehow. "How's Legacy doing?" someone asked. Eleanor smiled, looking down at the dog by her side. "He's spoiled," she said. "He thinks the whole world belongs to him. And honestly, he might be right." They laughed together. When the call ended, the house went quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet, now content, not hollow. There was a knock at the door. She frowned, surprised, and got up slowly, Legacy trotting at her heel. When she opened it, she found herself looking at a young woman holding a baby carrier. Inside, a small baby girl blinked up at her, clutching a plush German shepherd toy. "Hi," the woman said, a little breathless. Are you Eleanor Hayes?" "Yes," Eleanor said, confused. "Can I help you?" The woman smiled nervously. "My name's Avery. I don't know if you remember, but about a year ago, you left a comment on a support group page. You said I am an old lady who lost her whole world and found it again in a shelter dog. When my mom died, that comment, it helped. I saved it. And then, months later, I saw your story on the news about Ranger and the puppies and realized it was you. Ivy wanted to say thank you ever since. But then life got crazy, and she gestured helplessly at the baby. Well, you know." Eleanor blinked, stunned. "You came all this way just to say thank you?" Avery nodded. "And to ask you something. I named my daughter Ellie, after you. I thought maybe if it's not too weird, maybe she could meet the woman who helped her mom get through the worst year of her life without even knowing it." For a moment, Eleanor couldn't speak. Legacy sniffed at the baby carrier, tail wagging gently, as if he understood the significance of this new arrival. She stepped aside, her voice thick. "It's not weird," she said. It is wonderful. Please, come in." Later, as the baby fell asleep on her chest and Avery chatted with Daniel, who had arrived just in time to meet this new, unexpected branch of their grown family, Eleanor looked around the room, at the photos on the wall, at the corkboard full of dogs and humans whose lives had intertwined because one scared old K9 had walked out of a shelter and into her home, at Legacy, dozing on the rug, one ear flicking, as if Ranger herself were whispering instructions from somewhere just out of sight. "I thought I was alone," she said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. "But I wasn't. Not really. Not ever." That night, after everyone was gone and the lights were low, she sat once more on the sofa where it had all begun. Legacy jumped up beside her, stretching out with a contented groan, his head resting where Ranger E's had so many times. She reached up to the hook by the door and took down Ranger E's old collar. The metal tag clinked softly as she turned it over in her hands. "Look what you did," she whispered into the quiet room. "You stubborn, beautiful girl. You left me 10 little pieces of your heart, and somehow those pieces found their way into homes and lives and places I'll never see. You brought my son back to me. You filled this house with noise again. You even made a stranger name her child after me. That is some legacy." Legacy shifted, nudging her hand with his nose, as if to remind her he was listening. She slipped Ranger's collar onto a hook beside a second one, smaller, newer, with the name Legacy stamped into the tag. "Thank you," she said softly, "for not letting me disappear. For making sure that even when you were gone, I wasn't." Outside, a breeze rustled through the trees on Maple Street. Somewhere in the dark, a dog barked in the distance. Legacy gave a soft, sleepy woof in response. Eleanor leaned back, letting her eyes close, her hand resting on the warm, solid body beside her. The old sofa creaked under their combined weight, holding memory and present moment together in its worn-out cushions. The little blue house, once so full of shadows, breathed quietly around them. A woman who thought she'd lost everything. A dog who'd given her 10 chances to start over. And a legacy that reached farther than either of them could ever have imagined.